Good day, the Honorable Reviewers and Supervisor for this thesis defense, Sir Dedi Kurniawan as my first thesis supervisors, Ma'am Rani Haryanti as my second thesis supervisors, Ma'am Rosinta Norawati as my first reviewers, Ma'am Indri Anastasia as my second reviewers, and also Sir Robi Soma as my third reviewers. Thank you for giving me the opportunities to present my undergraduate thesis entitled The Implementation of Critical Thinking Skills in English Online Learning in Senior High School. My name is Nia Virdiana, and this is my presentation. Okay, first let's go to the background of this research. Living in the era of the Fourth Industrial Revolution and 21st century life, youth are required to possess more skills and abilities to keep pace with the current changes, whether in economic, technological, and societal. According to the SWOT, the Fourth Industrial Revolution is the developing knowledge stage where everyone needs more complex skills, which is 21st century skills. Wagner, together with US-based Apollo Education Group and also the World Health Organization, emphasized that critical thinking skills is one of the survival skills, which classified as cognitive and interpersonal skills that students need to be prepared for workforce and citizenships in the 21st century life. In Indonesia, critical thinking skills has been integrated into the most recent curriculum, or we know as a Curriculum 2013 or K13, in the amendments to the regulation of the Minister of Education and Culture or Kemendikbud in 2019 explained that K13 includes critical thinking skills because these skills are believed as a skill that could develop and strengthen student mindsets. Critical thinking skills, also known as a skill that never goes out of date, and also flexible, which make it easily to integrate it with another skill like listening, speaking, reading, and writing, where we know it is a common skills in the English subject. Besides, because English is known as the most widely spoken language in the world, quoted from Hamid in his journal, English is also compulsory foreign language subject in many high schools in Indonesia, because it is recognized as one of the skills that is used to compete in global workforce, science and technology, and also other human interaction activities. However, on May 18, 2020, the Ministry of Education and Culture announced the application of the learning process at home evenly in all schools in Indonesia due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It becomes a big problem for educators because the implementation of activities that have been designed to be carried out in the classroom forcibly converted into online learning. That's why, based on that issues, the study have two objectives. They are first, to explore the implementation of critical thinking skills in English online learning activities in senior high school, and the second is to explore the factors that affecting teacher in the implementation of critical thinking skill in English online learning activities in senior high school. Okay, the next is significance of the research. The significance of the research consisted of two significance. First, theoretically, where it is expected that this research can provide insight into what happens in English language teaching during pandemic COVID-19. And also the study result expected could enrich theory and be a reference for future study related to the critical thinking skills. While looking it from practically, this research expected to give English teacher positive input in teaching students using critical thinking skills, especially in high school level. And it is also expected to raise up the teacher awareness concerning their teaching strategy in teaching students critical thinking in the classroom. Then we continue to the main concept that I use in this research, which both are quoted from Paul et al. First, several critical thinking activities that must be done in the classroom, which are divided into 7. First, build a conducive atmosphere in the classroom before starting the lesson. Second, the teacher should not be the preacher in the classroom. The third, the teacher needs to encourage students to understand the lesson. The fourth, the teacher as the neutral party. And the next, the teacher should provide an environment so students can achieve what they need. And the next, the teacher should provide feedback. And the last is the teacher should support students when they consider many points of view. And the second concept is the 6 characteristics of the application of critical thinking skills in learning activities. They are divided into 6, which then I labeled also into C1, C2, C3, and until the C6. First is how to break big questions or tasks into smaller or more manageable parts. Second, create meaningful context in which learning is evaluated by the students. The third, help students clarify their thoughts by rephrasing or asking questions. And the fourth, pose thought-provoking question. 5 is encourage students to explain things to each other. And the sixth is to help students to find what they need to know by suggesting and showing students how to use resources. Then I combine these two concepts to make an observation sheet, which is next become the instrument of this research. And now research methodology. The participant of this research is an English teacher, and the setting of this research is SMA Kristen Binakasi in Jambi. This research is a case study qualitative research. The main sources that will be used in this research are the activities in the classroom during the process of English online learning, and the English teacher who teach English the 11th grade at SMA Kristen Binakasi in Jambi in the academic year 2020 and 2021. Meanwhile, to obtain the data, I used 3 techniques, and since this research is a study case, I use observation technique as the primary technique, interview for a validity check, and document as supporting data. Next is data analysis techniques. The process of data analysis in this research will be divided into 3. It is based on the framework of qualitative analysis by Miles Habermas, which are data reduction, data display, and conclusion drawing verification. And to confirm the validity of the data, I use triangulation strategy, also from Miles and Habermas. Triangulation strategy is a tactic to verifying or confirming findings by using multiple sources and modes of evidence. To obtain the data, I did 3 phases. First, I did observation. I recorded several Zoom meetings of online learning activities in the 11th grade of high school in under the access permission by the English teacher and of course the school. And this activity started on March 18 and ended on April 29 with the result of 4 videos collected. Then I analyzed the data, used the observation sheet, and turned the results into descriptive text so I could analyze the characteristic more deeper. The analyzing of the data is focused on online learning activities that reflected characteristics of critical thinking skills in each category, pre, core, and post activities. And the second is interview. I conducted 2 sessions of interview. First, to ask questions that were focused on activities during the observation, and the second interview is to ask questions focusing on teacher background information that will be used to picture out how the participants view about English and critical thinking skills in learning activity. The transcription of both interviews are separate for ease of interpretation and richness of description. And the last is documentation. In the documentation, I collected the sources in the form of photos and field notes during observation and the interviews. Now the result of the study, which is divided according to the research objective. First, the implementation of critical thinking in English online learning activities, and the second is the factors affecting teachers in the implementation of critical thinking skills in English online learning activities during the COVID-19 pandemic. The answer of the first objectives are divided into 2 themes. First theme is the characteristic of critical thinking skills are reflected in teachers' activities during online learning. And from the data collected, I found that critical thinking skills were applied by the teacher in online learning at SMA Kristen Binakasi. The first evidence is the compatibility of teachers' activities in online learning with 6 characteristics of critical thinking skills concept. And the results are displayed in the observation sheet. And also I tabulate the frequency of each characteristic that appeared in a learning activity for each observation into the table 2. From this table, it can be seen that all the characteristics of critical thinking skills have been applied in learning activities with different frequencies for each characteristic. The first and the second observation have the same or equal frequency in each characteristic. Meanwhile, in the observation 3 has more frequencies than others, especially the frequency of C3 and C5. And also there was an activity that reflected these both characteristics in observation 3 and was not found in other observation, precisely in the post activities. The activity is when the teacher asks a student to conclude the lesson that has been learned. This activity is included as an activity to presenting tentative conclusion to encourage students to make basic conclusion. However, observation 4 has less frequency in almost all characteristics. The reason was because learning topic observation 4 was a continuation of the previous material. In the core activity section of observation 4, there were no activities that involve personal experience or issues that are familiar to students, which means that the C2 and C3 were not reflected in learning activities. The reason is because the teacher held a discussion forum right after student presentation. We also can see in the table 2 that C6 has the same number of frequency in each observation. I found that in all the observation, the teacher always taught student the C6. Through these activities, the teacher has taught student how to find important points from what was discussed in the discussion forum and help them to process this information so that students can produce their own understanding of the lesson. And taking everything into consideration, critical thinking skills are easiest in online learning activities carried out by the teacher, but the frequency of the implementation can vary in each observation. The other evidence that can prove that the teacher has applied critical thinking in online learning activities is the teacher's awareness critical thinking skills. First, the teacher awareness of critical thinking skills is realized in the use of various kinds of activities in the online learning, which are first, the use of discussion forum. The teacher believes by using discussion, students will understand lesson more quickly. As stated by G.S. Baker, one of the characteristics of critical thinker is not afraid to have healthy debate with anybody. Then the teacher consciously implements it through discussion activities and learning activities. And the discussion that have been done also could allow students to think broadly and deeply, which prove that the teacher really applied critical thinking skills. And then the second and the third I combine is as integrating and adjusting personal experience and current issues that are familiar to students into the lessons. The aim of this action is to encourage students so they can be more engaged and interested into the lesson. This activity also shows the characteristic of the teacher as critical thinker, which is having creative, innovative, and original ideas in the designing the online learning activities. And then the next is the monitoring of student critical thinking. Critical thinking skills are included in the assessment system in this school. It is only monitored in detail only during assignment and project assessment. This assessment has also been implemented since the KTSP era or Kurikulum Tingkat Satuan Pendidikan and continues until now, K13 era. Then we go into the factors affecting teachers in the implementation of critical thinking skills in English online learning activities during the COVID-19 pandemic. To obtain this answer, I use interview techniques. The research findings are divided into two teams. The first team is the factors that the teacher needs in applying critical thinking skills in English online learning activities. And what I found is the teacher needed 3 factors to apply critical thinking skills in online learning activities that I categorized as teacher factors, student factors, and supporting factors. Teacher factor is factors that come from the teacher herself. From the interview I conducted, the teacher pointed out the lessons plan has as the first thing that the teacher needs to prepare when implementing critical thinking skills in learning activities. The teacher added that all teachers must sure that the activities in the lesson plan have directed students to use their critical thinking skills. And the next is the readiness of the teacher before applying critical thinking skills in learning activities. It's mentioned as an important thing because will be difficult for teachers to apply critical thinking skill in learning activities if they do not reflect as critical thinkers. Okay, the next is student factors. Student factors are factors that come from the students themselves, such as several things that motivate students to learn. From the interview conducted, it is found that the teacher encouraged students by relating the learning topic with students' culture, like contextual or current issue that familiar to students. And the teacher believes that by connecting the lesson with the familiar issue to students will trigger students to use their critical thinking skills, especially if the situation arises from the student environment or something that students have experienced. And the last is supporting factors, which is a factors that arise from deliberately made things to encourage or foster an activity that can help the learning activities. The supporting factor is space or place, which the teacher mentioned as wadah or vessel, that formed by the teacher to become a place for students to express their opinion and arguments. The second theme is the teachers and student challenges during the application of critical thinking skills in English online learning activities. The application of critical thinking in online learning activities is still relatively new or barely used in Indonesia, especially for the teacher. Because of that, the teacher faced several challenges, which is identified it into two, which is internal challenges and external challenges. Internal challenges are challenges that directly impact the learning process, such as situations faced by the teacher or students in the learning activities. From the interview conducted, the teacher stated that the most challenging thing in applying critical thinking skills is when implementing the lesson plan using existing channels, like online channels, for example, like Zoom and Google Classroom. By only going through online channels like this, the teacher's scope is very limited. The teacher only can supervise students through online, and also there is a limited time where the teacher explained that she only has 60 minutes to teach in online learning, and oftenly the implementation of critical thinking skill is not run optimal. The next challenges are faced by the students, which is condition or situation that are not support the learning activities, like the condition and situation in their home that make them have no motivation to study. The teacher also mentioned that the burden of other subjects and their assignments also make students tired and bored to take another part in monotone online learning. Okay, the last challenges in the internal challenges is the teacher difficulty in monitoring students at the same time. The teacher cannot always actively supervise students, nor can students always respond to teachers on social media. The teacher explained that students were indifferent to turning off the camera and mute their voice in the Zoom because they thought that the teacher would not pay attention to them. And it was not fully wrong because the teacher was unable to pay attention to all of them at the same time. And then we jump into external challenges. External challenges are challenges that come unexpectedly from outside of the learning activities but will still affect learning activities. The things that I included in the external challenges are: first, internet has become the most problems that students face. So it can be they do not have any quotas to join the Zoom or have unstable signal. And next is unequal access to technology. The teacher explained that the inequality of students in owning technology is also a challenge for her. As happened in learning activities in observation 3, there was a student who is doing a presentation but suddenly disappeared because his cell phone battery was low and he does not have any laptop. The teacher also experienced the same thing. On the observation 4, the presentation of a student should not have to stop for a while because the teacher suddenly out from the Zoom, and because the teacher had blackout or power cuts, and the teacher's laptop could not turn on because there is no power to open it. And then another challenges is the unexpected events. The event that the teacher call as unexpected is like blackout or power cuts. Power cuts are very influential in learning process. For example, like I already mentioned before, where the teacher experienced the power cuts or blackouts during the learning activities. The last challenges in the external challenges is students' ability, and from the interview results, the teacher stated that the obstacle faced by students in learning English because English is a foreign language and they have no time enough to use it oftenly. And additionally, knowledge, culture, family, and social background also affect student language skills. And the teacher illustrated like this. Students who have background family militarian or authoritarian will grow into someone who has no courage to express their opinions. It will be difficult for students to develop their critical thinking skills. And the next is conclusion. From the information, the results of the finding and this discussion that I already mentioned before, I can conclude that the characteristic and teachers' awareness of the critical thinking skills prove that critical thinking skills are implemented in the online learning activities, which integrated into three general activities. They are the use of discussion forum as a vessel for learning activities that characterize critical thinking skills, and the second, integrating teachers or student personal experience into the lessons, adjusting the topic with contextual or current issues that are familiar to students. And the second is the factor affecting teacher in the implementation of critical thinking skills in English online learning activities are divided into two, such as the factors and the challenges. The factors that needed by the teachers are divided into three: teacher factors, student factors, and supporting factors. Meanwhile, the challenges are divided into two. There are internal challenges such as the implementation of lesson plan in online learning, the limited channels for teacher, condition or situation that have been faced by both teacher and students, and also the teacher's difficulties when monitoring students simultaneously at the same time. Meanwhile, external challenges such as unstable internet, limited quota for internet, and unequal access to technology both for teacher and students, unexpected events like during the learning process, and student English language ability and critical thinking skills. And there are also the implementation. Based on the result of the findings and discussion obtained, I propose several factors that can be considered as follows. Teacher readiness to carry out online learning activities. Teacher readiness can be seen in terms of the pedagogy, the lesson plans, teachers' critical thinking skills, and also teachers' technology skills. And the next is students have to equip it with critical thinking skills, not only asked to do them, but also trained on how to apply them. Therefore, teachers need to pay attention to the needs and interests of students, which supports student thinking skills in online learning. And also student readiness to take part in online learning activities. Student readiness can be in the form of an understanding of the use of learning technology that to be used, supporting items for using technology such as phone, vouchers, or internet quotas, and other supporting material for learning materials such as digital books. And as the suggestion, I propose is first, the teacher education study program, especially the English language study program, needs to start integrating critical thinking skills in pedagogy and technology training that affect critical thinking in the classroom. And the next is the Ministry of Education and Culture and schools also need to consider giving training and workshop for teachers and students about various activities that apply critical thinking skill using e-learning platforms and the development of online learning techniques using low resource technology. And the last is for future research, so explore critical thinking skills in online learning activities. I hope that the next research can use and develop the instrument and the finding in the study. We have come to the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. Have a good day.